Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar. This is Joanna Penn and I'm here with Alex Newton. Hi Alex.
Hey, good evening Joanna, and good afternoon or even good morning to wherever you are on the planet.
Yes, wherever you are on the planet. Fantastic. So welcome everyone who's just joined us. I'm Joanna Penn and I'm here with Alex Newton, and we're going to have a brilliant time this evening. We're trying to take your mind off things, but I did want to acknowledge the strange times we are in right now. And we're allowed one walk per day here in the UK. And this is a little farm sign that I saw by the side of the canal. And it's a quote from J.R.R. Tolkien. I wish it need not have happened in my time, said Frodo. So do I, said Gandalf, and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. And when I saw that this morning, I was like, oh, that is so right, because hopefully no one we know and love is sick, and there are people who are sick and things are quite bad in many places, but we are here and the time we have is available to be with our loved ones, to be safe, to be home hopefully, and also to learn. So that is going to be our focus this evening. There's quite enough of the virus out there, so we are not going to talk about it. We are just going to learn this evening. Now, just to talk about Alex for a minute, I bring Alex to you, and he won't mind me saying this, but he is a super data geek. He is such a geek, and I love that because I am just not a data person at all. But luckily, Alex loves this stuff, and this evening he's going to share lots with you. Now, there will be graphs and things, but don't worry, you're going to get the slides, you're going to get a replay. So take your notes, but you will have stuff later on. There will be some time for a Q&A later, but for now, I'm going to and I will be in the chat, the question area, if you have any questions. So please do type anything in there. It's not a public chat, but it will be me answering. Okay, Alex, handing it over to you.
Thank you so much, Joanna. I think this is the third time we do something like this together, and it's also great to return here to people who might have attended this before. We have new data, we have new trends, and I look forward to sharing these insights with you. You know, let's jump right into it. And for anybody, we know we have enough out there what to do, but you know, it is right now about setting priorities. Let's focus on those things that matter, and let's focus on those things you can control. Now, you can control being on a webinar, you can control that you learn. You cannot control whether people in the end read more or less, or you know, whatever is happening out there. But in the confined area of your home where you're currently locked down, to use the time productively, we can do a lot. And with this, Joanna and I decided to go ahead with this webinar and share our knowledge here concerning the know-how of how to use Amazon data to do exactly that. Focus your efforts, because the time you now have, how to save time, many have to save money, how to save your most precious resource as a writer, your creative resource, and hopefully still sell more books, if not in the short term, at least in the longer term. Although I hear also people speak about even sales going up, not only down, but more about that in just a second. So why do we talk about data? Well, let's not fly blind during these times. Out there is your environment, and as far as the book market goes, to many, it has become pretty invisible. Now, we provide data, and that is like to a pilot, the dashboard, to know where you're flying into, you know, even if outside there is very bad visibility out there. And that's the whole point of why you have to look at data. Good news is, Joanna, we won't need a pilot license, and it's not that complicated at all. I'll try to make it as palatable as possible. Now, your goal as an author, whether it is for the money or for what you get from your readers, or whether you just want to have the authority as a nonfiction author, you have to know your market. The the second you talk about being an indie publisher, you are in the business. Now, today we want to talk about the market, and in the announcement of the webinar, I also talked about market forces and a couple of market forces, longer term market forces you have to be aware of, and we also add some shorter term ones. And when I start talking about market forces, people start looking at me, what the heck is he talking about? Is this Star Wars or what? Well, market forces, everybody has his or her experience. This is my early experience as a young boy. This is not me, by the way. But the left-hand side, I had one of these, or no, I didn't at the start. And that was exactly the problem. This thing was sold out everywhere. My mother and I went from shop to shop. And that was the first time in my life that I noticed that you have to be on the right side of supply and demand. Now, how does this apply to the book market? These laws of supply and demand, of certain demands going up and down, these market forces and these things happen. And it is about really catching the waves. And this is just one example to illustrate sometimes how pronounced in the long term these market forces are, and how potentially invisible in the short run over months and quarters. So look at this graph here. This is from 2006 to 2020. So we're talking a 15-year period here. And this is the Google search volume for certain searches people do on Google. The yellow line is, vampire romance. You see, vampires almost never die. This is after, the Twilight blockbuster. That drove a next wave here in red, slightly lower in absolute terms, but this is the big paranormal romance wave, which peaked here in January 2012. Following by a next wave, reverse harem, which then, certain urban fantasy and paranormal romance writers jumped on, and there will be next waves and future waves to come. This is what we mean with market forces and catching the waves, and we want to talk about these things today. This is one example. Now, if we go to the helicopter perspective, and Joanna, you said, hey, none of the indie authors, care about the traditional publisher's view anymore, at least in the UK or in the US. Well, they just published their year-to-date numbers for 2019, so pre-corona, pre-crisis, and they basically saw a slight decline for the year 2019. This is by a revised chart. I showed that 6 months earlier where they were still bullish, by the way, about a 4% overall increase. So they are just short of 8 billion business and trade revenues in the US. And you see what is happening to them. I mean, their ebook sales are down 4.2%. The one thing they agree here with Amazon and many indie publishers is the growth of audio in blue. But see, this is where they earn their money. And this is why, by the way, their clouds are very, very dark right now. Because as you've heard on the news, Amazon stopped shipping non-essential items. There's a big question mark on, like Dan Wood mentioned today in another talk, very interesting, the whole print supply chain, paper is coming, no longer crossing the borders. I mean, there's a huge disruption going on. So for all of us who are more in the digital side of things, I think we're privileged and we're probably glad to be there. Because from an alternative view, the overall market indicators up until end of 2019 for ebooks looked like extremely bright. And these are numbers based on the Kindle Select Global Fund in absolute terms, in US dollar millions. By now, more than $1 billion of these funds have been given to authors and publishers who are with Kindle, with KDP Select, and see what happened. So in 2019, this market still grew by 12.5%. Now, in the short term, in January, we still had a 7.6% increase of this fund. In February, we saw a 3.5% decline. And obviously, we're all curious to see what will happen to that, because this is not reflecting the overall market or the market outside Kindle, but it is since Amazon does have 85% plus, the rumor goes, of the ebook market, it is a big indicator that we need to watch. And I don't want to go too much into the mathematics, but very important is this: if you are in Kindle and you get a pay per page, I know short term everybody moans about you know, a decline and is happy about a rise. Well, on average, they're paying, as we know, about $4.65 per 1,000 pages read, and that curve has flattened out. So if you do the maths and say the total pot is known and the price per page is known, you also can calculate what's happened to the overall number of pages read as an indicator of reading activity out there, right? And so here we go. The growth per year in 2019 was about 14% year-on-year growth in pages read. And we traced it down to, well, where is that growth coming from? 2/3 of the growth has come from Kindle Unlimited share gain, whilst about the rest, 1/3 of it, comes from underlying ebook market growth, right? So also here, a short-term increase. We still had page increases in January. Shorter term, we're down 12%, and we'll see what's happening. Now, in the announcement of the webinar, we talked about big market forces. Now, whether you are wide and represented on, say, other platforms, quoting Dan Wood from this afternoon, I think we will see a further increase in the whole ebook, you know, also in other platforms. I mean, with Apple for the first time and now, you know, really promoting books during the crisis, and with the big difficulties in the supply chain of print book, there may be a further shift towards the digital media as a shorter term outlook. What happens to the overall volume is obviously up in the air, and I don't have the crystal ball as to what will happen there. But the one thing we did observe is an overall market force that if you are represented on Amazon, you may have noticed one thing. What we did here, we analyzed over the last 3 years, what is the share of Kindle Unlimited books in each of the top 100 bestseller lists that you find on the Kindle platform. And that share in the top 100 rankings across 30 main categories has increased from 45% Kindle Unlimited to 62% of the books being Kindle Unlimited. And as soon as you see this, people jump up and say, oh my God, you know, conspiracy theory, Amazon is discriminating against non-KDP Select books, non-Kindle Unlimited books. Well, we don't believe that is the case. We believe the reason behind that is basically baked into the Amazon algorithm, or the Amazon sales rank algorithm, I shall say, because the Amazon sales rank is very, very simple, because it's only driven by two things, and two things alone. The one is on the left-hand side, an outright purchase, and the other thing is a Kindle Unlimited download. And you see on the right-hand side, to you as a prospective customer, the Kindle Unlimited download is advertised as a read for free. I know you've paid for the subscription, but psychologically, it is like a free read. On the right-hand side, whatever the absolute number of the price is, it is a purchase. And obviously, the button on the right-hand side will convert at a higher level as any price point and button on the left-hand side. But since both of these drive sales rank in the same way, it is no surprise that over time, you just see the share of Kindle Unlimited books in the higher ranking bestseller lists increase and increase and increase. So does that mean you have to jump and be only in Kindle Unlimited? No, but you have to be aware of that trend, and you have to be aware that as always, the story differs by genre. So for those of you who are interested in the next level of detail, we also pulled that for you here in the webinar, where you see Kindle Unlimited very, very big in romance, very big in sci-fi and fantasy, very big in teen young adult, also big in mystery, thriller, suspense, but here it's a more balanced ratio, as it is also in literature and fiction, more general. But you get the idea. Always have a look at why are things happening and what is the difference by genre. Now, what doesn't differ by genre so much is this chart I always show, because it is my mantra here. The money is at the top. So on the left-hand side, if we think of all the millions and millions, and I think by now there are more than 6.5 million English-speaking titles out there. That's and thus possible sales rank. The very tip of the mountain is, the #1 store-wide Kindle rank, and there is 1 to 50,000. That's where close to 90% of the money is being made, and then from 50,000 to the rest, there's not so much money. So this is not 50,000 books, that is 50,000 ranks. So the books on these ranks positions may change, but this is where the bulk of the money is being earned. And you will obviously ask yourself, well, good, so how do I get to the top and who makes it to the top? And the how is many roads lead to Rome, but on the who makes it to the top, here we also did an analysis for you, which is who are the best mountain climbers, so to speak, where we found that of the share of Kindle Store top 100 rankings achieved by genre, we see, no surprise, the umbrella category, which is not very much telling, literature and fiction, but the best mountain climbers, in inverted commas, are romance, followed by mystery, thriller, suspense, then already with a little less sales, sci-fi, fantasy, then nonfiction, then teen, young adult, and then there come all the other genres to give you a feel of who is up there. So this is by genre. The other big question people ask me is, well, how does this differ by type of publisher? And there we did a huge analysis for you, which is you have to classify more than like 14,000 different publisher names and map them against all the imprints of the big five. And it's a huge thing to do. And here's the result for you. The result is indies made it into the top 100 store rankings 38% of the time, followed by the Amazon imprints, followed by the big five, and then followed by all the others. And Joanna, I think this is, irrespective of short-term or long-term crisis, I think we should give all the indies and hybrids for that matter, and all authors for that matter, who support the arts and, be creative. But this is a big tap on the back of all the indies out there. I think that's a big mission accomplished. Now, from there, we had yet another look at bestseller lists, and this will be also in parts here new data for you. So the big bestseller list revelations we had is there's one page on the Amazon Kindle store where you have to scroll down a bit and it gets to category bestseller list, and you can click on the print bestseller list, Kindle bestseller list, and Audible bestseller list. Now, once you click on print, we discovered already a while back a very interesting phenomenon. And that interesting phenomenon is as follows, because you notice that, for example, we took here, once you click on a category, in this case romance, you start noticing that it says books. It doesn't say print books, by the way, at any part in the store. It says books. So it is and you notice there is Kindle edition, Kindle edition, Kindle edition at the very top of the bestseller list. So we noticed, hey, this is not a print book bestseller list. Somebody gave the wrong graph to that. This is a cross-format bestseller list. So what we could do is investigate what is the share of different formats across all those 30 bestseller lists. And this is the result here that we took back in 2017. On the left-hand side, you see all the names of the genres, the bestseller list, starting there with romance, LGBT books, mystery, thriller, suspense. This is not in order of sales, but we sorted it in descending order by share of ebooks versus orange print versus blue audio. And this was the picture in 2017. And we then took the picture again. This is end of 2019. So let me just roll back once more. This is 2017, you see on your screen now. And I shift once more to the end of 2019. So we see that print continues to get squeezed. And I think with the current crisis, this can probably only get worse in the short term. So at K-Lytics, we are covering the red side already in extreme detail, down to the lowest category level, but there wasn't much transparency as yet on the audio side. And just to drive the story home, if we only look and not look at kids' books and not look at nonfiction, if we only take the big 5 fiction genres, this is the format penetration of those top 100 bestseller lists. And I think this requires no commenting. This is the formats that dominate the Amazon platform in the fiction area. So with this, we have, as announced in the prelude to the webinar, we have here a bit of a premiere, which is for the first time we also started diving into audio data. Now, to our K-Lytics Elite members, this will be launched very shortly down to a subcategory level and below, which is available on Audible. And I at least wanted to share with you the bigger picture that we started discovering here. And here it is. For the first time, some visibility on audio sales by category, not in absolute terms, but as measured by the average sales rank of the top 100 titles in the various categories. So what do we have here? Number 1, not very telling, literature and fiction, but then the number 1 audio book category is sci-fi and fantasy, followed then by nonfiction, relationships, parenting, and personal development, followed by mystery, thriller, suspense, then business and careers. That's probably what people listen to when they drive to work in the morning, potentially. Biographies and memoirs, then political science, health and wellness, and only then romance. So again, you see how important it is to maneuver with and use data by genre before you, say, jump on your audiobook project. One should have a look at this, and we will be looking forward to launching to our elite members the more granular level than even below, because also on Audible we will have subcategory in parts, even subcategory data for these various genres. So let me just pause here, because this is a bit of a first time we share this here to webinar audiences. Is this useful? Give me a thumbs up or a quick reaction in the chat box or question box, that I can see what's happening there.
I just added there, Alex, while you're pausing, that in my own sales, my non-fiction definitely does much better in print and audio than my fiction, which is dominant in ebooks, and I'm in the thriller niche. So I'm probably in the personal development category there with my audiobook. So that certainly reflects my own experience.
Great, and thank you very much for the reactions we have here. Wow, good information, like it, brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much for that. It was a lot of work, and yes, it depends by genre, and I hope that this gives you a bit of a further idea of whether or not, when it may be worth to jump onto the audio bandwagon, or at least know what you're getting into from a demand point of view. So you see, closing the subject on market forces, this is what is currently happening there in the market. These are some of the market forces, and we always look for solutions in market forces. Back to my example with the Rubik's Cube, this was my solution at the time, and tough times call for tough solutions. So here we go. Let's talk a bit more about the next level of detail and also the challenges we are all facing out there in the market. This is an exhibit I show in every webinar, but it's with updated numbers. We know the place of books is always getting more crowded. So right now we are at close to 6.3 million English-speaking titles on the Kindle store. That was per end of February this month. So we do know that visibility is an issue. And by the way, still at the present time, about 70,000 new titles are added every month. So no wonder you have to pay for advertising. and the supply of books is still growing with 12% growth over the last year. So with this, we know that some of us may get overwhelmed or feel, hey, my next book feels a bit like a gamble. And I don't, Joanna doesn't, nobody has the silver bullet, but what we can at least do is try to use tools and try to use information to at least improve the odds of success if there is no guarantee of success. And in my case, you know, I'm a geek and a data guy, and I always face the problem, well, mention data to an audience, and the typical reaction looks unfortunately like this. Now, let me try to explain in very simple terms of what we're about to do and what you're about to see. So you as an author, you usually work in your writing cave right now, much more so even than before. And you obviously have the insights from working alone. You do a promotion and you know, hey, book 3, promo 12, this worked. And you start to replicate the successes or try to replicate the successes and learnings that you've had. Also, we can work with our author friends, and many of you will be parts of forums or Facebook groups where you share your insights, you know, public groups, secret groups, author clubs, whatever it is, and you learn even more. What we then try to do is support all those efforts with even a step further and say, you can work with a couple of authors, and that is already an improvement in the amount of data you have. But what we do is, how about working with thousands of books? And that is in essence what we do. And the whole purpose of working with thousands of books is to produce insights. Basically, very insightful insights like this one, so that we then can tell what percentage of the chart looks like Pac-Man versus what percentage of the market does not look like Pac-Man. So we crunch the numbers of thousands and thousands of books. Why? So that you then don't have to, and that hopefully we can come to fairly simple conclusions that you can then put into action, whether it is strategic action, such as, you know, planning a certain book project or deciding on your categories for your marketing, you name it. So for doing that, let's talk for those of you who are not looking into Amazon data like every day. Let me give you like a 2-3 minutes rundown of what Amazon data entails and what the essentials are that you have to understand, almost irrespective of, you know, how far you want to use Amazon data for your purposes. Very simply put, where can you look for useful data on the Amazon platform? There's tons of places you can get lost at the site, but there's 4 basic things you should know. One is the search bar, and everybody knows that also as a consumer. Because once you type something into the search bar, you get results, and these results, if you look at a lot of them, can give you certain conclusions. In blue, the bestseller lists are very important. The bestseller lists show at any point in time, unfortunately, only a limited number of books, that is 100 books at a time in a bestseller list. So the information is limited, but it is very reliable because the ranking is purely based on sales and downloads. Not about reviews or not about, you know, anything else, you know, conversion or anything. It's just sales and downloads. Then you have the individual product pages, and you have on the left-hand side, different from the bestseller list, the browse categories. Most of them, they have the same name, but the way books are displayed are different. On the browse categories, you find whatever many books are in there, although Amazon will cap the display at 6,400 for any at maximum, but there are categories with more than 50,000 in it. So that is important to know. It gives you a lot of books, and the display sequence there is not by sales. This is where conversion, reviews, and recency of books, all these other individual things enter into the Amazon algorithm. So let's go a little more detail about the product pages. So once you're on the product page and you scroll down, you get all the small print. Consumers hardly ever look at it, but us, the authors, do. And you see 2 numbers there, and still advanced authors sometimes get them confused. Amazon bestseller rank, which is the upper number here in this example, the 25,176, and the category bestseller rank. And that is an extremely important distinction to the beginners, because time and again we hear in Facebook forums, hey, I'm a #1 bestseller. And the question is, well, where? Overall in the Amazon store, like you mean Amazon bestseller rank, or do you mean in the bonsai category of gardening and horticulture? You get the point. The category shows you what is hot within a category, but it doesn't necessarily tell you that there are a lot of sales. Only the upper number, the bestseller rank here, will show you that there is a certain number of sales. So beware of bestsellers that do not sell. Amazon introduced those bestseller badges to basically entice people to click on bestseller badges and buy the books. So that is the whole point. Now, Amazon bestseller rank, very plain and simple. And also a good friend of mine, Matthias Mattig in Germany, they conducted tests on this, and it is actually very simple and not a big secret. It is 2 things that drive the bestseller rank: purchases and downloads. So say on day 1, you have 100 downloads, all purchases, and on day 3, you have 150. These are like votes for your books. And these votes have one thing you have to know about: they decay in value over time. So on day 1, if you had 100 sales, the next day, these sales are worth only half of it. Then next day, only half of it, and so on. So say you have this type of book and you wanted to know what is my sales rank on the day 3 of this observation. It is actually fairly simple. Amazon will basically look at, well, what were your past sales and how much are they still worth at the present point in time, day 3. In this case, 175 votes. Now, if another book has more votes, i.e. downloads and sale, it will rank higher, in this case, #1. If another book has less, it will rank lower. And you immediately notice this is also a relative measure, because it basically means this explains why you can have a declining sales rank when your sales go up, because the book #1 had an even higher increase in sales. And it can also explain why your sales may decrease in absolute terms, but your sales rank has improved. Why? Because other books, your competitors, have suffered an even bigger decrease in books. And that thing is then updated, up to 2 hours, every 2 hours. And that is because there is this decaying value that explains that zigzag shape that you find in your statistics. So you see, if your friends and family buy the book, the rank shoots up, and if then nothing happens, you see the curve flattening out again, so on and so forth. So think of it like purchases and downloads are like votes that count toward a ranking, but they decay over time. I hope I'm making sense. I hope it's not too complex, but it is important, because what you have to notice is this is the graph for an individual book, but what you can do for one book, you can basically also do for a whole category of books. And the one important thing you have to watch is, if you look at the Amazon platform at any point in time and you say, oh my God, green smoothie books are currently really great, then, well, you have to know that this can refer to just one of these very temporary peaks, and then the thing declines again. So you have to look at things over time to come to meaningful conclusions as to what is selling on Amazon and what isn't. So I hope this explains a bit of what is going on. I briefly also want to mention the search bar. The search bar is important, especially when you start to look at what is your competition, what other books are out there. Most of us will just enter in, by the way, a term such as whatever, dragon shifter romance or dragon shifter, just as a word. And Amazon will basically use this search term sometimes as an end for the first search result, and then it will either mention books that are Dragon or have Shifter somewhere in the title or book description or in the keywords. You can consciously use this, vertical bar to introduce an OR operator. Very useful, by the way, is the minus operator that few people know about, where you can, say list books that are Dragon Shifter minus romance, but not the romance stuff. You want to have more the whatever urban fantasy stuff, and there's very little of it. And then, by the way, you can use quotes for verbatim searches, but it's not always reliable. In fact, very few times it's reliable what Amazon is churning up. You can also use the advanced search on the platform, and you can then further use the sidebar categories to further narrow down your search results by category. Many don't know this when they research their market, and it is very useful, especially as the categories have become extremely crowded. All right, I mentioned the distinction between the categories and bestseller lists, so I won't go into this in detail, but the last point I want to make about these mechanics is when you can look at the sales rank of one book, you can also do so for many books, and that is what we do for you. And you can look at these things over time. You can look at it by category, by search results, or any custom grouping, like we did recently in our research for female detective thrillers, where we basically screened every title and book description for the occurrence of female first names and the weight of female pronouns versus male pronouns to filter out all those books that are truly female protagonist thrillers. So with this, I'm a big fan of categories. This is only a starting point. We're not only using the categories, but it is a very good tool to get a quick check of the market. And why am I a fan? Well, Amazon pushes very much like any retail store, a category-based shopping experience. Once you enter the book side, for example, immediately they draw your attention to the various aisles in the shop represented by categories. And if your book is not listed in the right aisle, it's like you are selling noodles, but you're only in the washing powder department. You're not going to be found necessarily. Also, in addition to obviously keywords being important, the search results are often confined to matching categories. So once you type in paranormal romance, on the very left-hand side, you will, almost exclusively see paranormal romance categories, so books from these categories, so they get preference in the listings. Given the shortage of time, I don't want to get into too much geeky detail, and this is as geeky as it gets in this webinar, but if you use your browser to display the source code of the Amazon page, you will find on a clean page, i.e. one that you have a clean book link, and you can Google what that is, you basically will find that the keywords as a Google browser would view a Amazon page, you will see there that what is keywords is essentially the category information that is pushed into the source code of the page and seen by search engines. Now, last but not least, category choices drive bestseller badges, and that is important for your search results. So if you have a good category where you can rank easily, the likelihood of this badge showing up are bigger, and the conversion of these books is simply higher than the ones that don't have that. So the category choices really drive that bestseller badge. For example, this book here also has a good sales rank overall, and there's a completely arbitrary example, but obviously if you have this #1 rank in global marketing, it gives you a certain authority if you happen to be a seller of such type of non-fiction titles. But last but not least, this whole data stuff gives you vital data for the choice of your book projects and for finding the markets and categories that are right for you and attractive for you as an author. Let's dive into that and look at what I mean with that. So first of all, this data can really help define and hone your goals and also reflect your goals. For example, on a strategic level, what do you want to write? And on a more tactical level, what do you want to market? And what categories do you want to put your books? So what you have here is, for example, if you have a motivation that says, I don't care about the sales of my category, I just write for the passion because I'm a volcano photographer writer, and you want categories that have the best topical fit for any subject. If you are in there for the money, you may see categories that are very high in sales, but have as little as competition as possible. And if you're in there in the nonfiction game, you may say, well, are there any nonfiction categories where I can still, compete and be a #1 bestseller as a proof of my authority, and then actually earn my money elsewhere in courses, or you name it. So this is the starting point. What are really your goals? But many of us are in there also for the money and want high sales or high recognition, whatever your currency is, applause. And that is reflected by those genres that are high sales. We already looked at it a bit. And what you can do, and that is important, you really have to know where to drill, because there are categories out there in book genres where you may have a high motivation of writing, but the outcome is not very promising. So for example, we track in our K-Lytics Elite database, we track the average sales rank of all those categories, and rest assured, there are categories where there are no sales here. So especially many nonfiction type of genres, be careful before you dive into this game on an ebook level. It may be different for some print categories, but it is a very tough game you have to be aware of. So what are the high selling categories? On a high level, we already looked at it. It would be romance, MTS, sci-fi, fantasy, teen, young adult. If you then ask, well, what is the next level down? I here also have an excerpt of our current database. So you can drive it to the next level down, and you see the big mystery, thriller, suspense genres are doing well. Some of the big romance genres are doing well. For example, these days, romantic comedy, a big thing, perhaps also a bit of an escapism these days, and we just covered it with a special report, by the way, only diving into that one category. And you can review this list a bit in the replay to have a closer look at what is selling, and I hope that helps you. The other thing to consider, though, before you jump onto any genre that simply has high sales, also consider a bit the level of competition you see there. Because what you want to have is there's many opportunities abound where you can say every little star here on the graph is a genre or a category, and there's no limits to your creativity in even generating those ideas. But if you wanted to have a map to the stars, you could consider there is difference between writing for the yellow star or for the red star, both of them being different genres, where you say the higher up you go on the map, the higher the level of sales, but the further you move to the right of the chart, the higher the level of competition. And therefore, the yellow star in this very example has a higher sales and less competition, and is better than a genre that has lower sales, is lower above the horizon, and has much more competition, is more to the right. The good news is what we have developed over the years is a true map of this market, and the map exists for real, and people who know K-Lytics know that we basically update this every month. So here is an excerpt of this map, and this is a map of like 7,000 genres as you find them on the Kindle platform. And you really can, make up your mind. And of course, these categories are not perfect, but they give you a first approximation of what do you get into when you write mystery, thriller, suspense, which is like super high selling, heavily contested though also by trad publishers, sky high sales, but more than 120,000 titles in it. whether you go more for a niche type of approach by age group, for example, teen young adults, you focus on romance and then say within romance, the clean and wholesome stuff, fairly new category Amazon introduced with only 450 titles in it, good sales, but not sky high sales. And of course, if you want to write biographies about country and folk singers, that is on the bottom left-hand side, and be my guest, but you get the idea. So Joanna also asked me, let's do a bit of a rundown, very fast rundown here for some of the big genres. Obviously, I cannot now share each and every dot on this page, but just to give you a feel, you have to make a decision whether you go into a big contested paranormal romance market towards the right, more a niche market between 2,000 and 10,000 titles in it. They're in clean and wholesome romance category, or on the left-hand side, something like sci-fi and dystopian. The next part you can do is look at the data also over time. So here, for example, we tracked over 5 years. The red line is the erotica category, which has been hampered by the restrictions in advertising. So we see this path down, although it's leveling off now for almost a year. And this huge rise in clean and wholesome romance now ranking at a higher level than erotica, but also, sort of now stable, but at a, leveling off level. Very interesting observations you can take over time. We talked, by the way, about paranormal romance earlier. Had we made that picture bigger, we would have noticed what you see here. We see a bit of a renaissance of paranormal romance these days. The curve is going back up. And if you only looked at, observations at a point in time, you would never notice these type of market forces that are going on in the market. All right, so for those of you who are on mystery, thriller, suspense, I hope we also have some MTS writers in here. Similar choices here, cozy mystery has become a bit of a mainstream market. Here, for example, the Mark Dawson field, a very attractive niche in mystery, thriller, suspense, crime fiction, vigilante justice. Or very hot right now on the very left-hand side, domestic thrillers. And coinciding with that, we just did a special report on psychological thrillers, ranking extremely high, very successful, and not overcrowded yet. So here, for example, this is the 5-year trend of the psychological thrillers bestseller list, and I think it speaks for itself. So the average bestseller rank across the top 20 title by now are in the top 50 store-wide, and that's like super sky high in sales. So we took a closer look at that in a special report in our members area, and you see, looking at this over a period of time can be extremely powerful. All right, what else is there? By the way, for the cozy mystery authors, why is paranormal cozy mystery doing so well? You have a long-term evolution here in cozy mystery already being sky high and like the flat red curve, combined with an overall trend in paranormal mystery, thriller, suspense. Put both of these trends together and you have paranormal cozy mystery. All right, so this gives you a bit of a snapshot for the various genres. We also don't want to forget science fiction. Science fiction, also here, good news, there are still smaller niche markets out there, although there things are getting more crowded, and especially if you're in things like post-apocalyptic science fiction or dystopian, the Hunger Games type of things, these have decreased in market attractiveness a bit. The question here was, what is cozy mystery? Cozy mystery is like, think of Agatha Christie, as a very simplistic description. So also fantasy, a very healthy genre, extremely healthy genre on Kindle right now. Dragons are big. Magical realism has been doing well. Paranormal and urban fantasy on the right-hand side, very big. And yeah, so, have a look at these maps. They can be very helpful. They're not, the holy grail, but they give you an approximation of what to expect. And then, we also use other things. By the way, people also select categories as to where can they rank easily. And these categories do exist, but it's also important not to game the system. I mean, readers are not stupid. So, you know, being a #1 bestseller with a romance book in woodworking projects, we're not necessarily advocating this, Joanna and I, so that doesn't make sense. What does make sense, though, is working on your categories to get a broad exposure. What many people do not know is you can have more than 2 categories. You can be in up to 10 big names with private reps at Amazon, even get into more categories, as you can see in this example here of Bella Forest. The whole point being you're not confined by your 10 categories. And, you know, if you think you can only do what you see in your Amazon dashboard, that is not the limiting factor. In fact, you can simply reach out to Amazon and ask them, and they will basically solve this whole problem of this backend on the KDP dashboard not matching the Amazon storefront. Well, you can simply tell them, you know, either going via Author Central, and in the replay you will have the link here on the left-hand side. Author Central has a form, or you go via KDP and they will happily add the storefront categories to your book that you can list in. And that, by the way, is also then the way to look for topical fit. Now, I know people removed the whole path category information from the individual book pages. So this is why we in our tool, by the way, do track all the possible category paths with their respective sales volume, with their price information in competitive intensity in our tool. So if you wanted to, for example, list your books into something that has to do with adventure, you can simply, you know, put in the term adventure and you get, like, you know, a whole list of any category. And there are like 63 that have the term adventure somewhere in the category path. Obviously, then you would filter out the kids' books that are not relevant, but you get the idea. The importance is the categories are pretty specific. Unfortunately, Amazon has removed the information from the individual book pages, but we still offer it in our tool combined with the data, so as to alleviate the pain of the full category path, which you require to tell them where to put it to, that full path no longer showing up on your individual book pages or your competitor book pages, for that matter. All right, so that gives you a bit of a rundown of, you know, what you can do with categories. Now, categories are not the end of the story. Obviously, we don't stop there. You can go beyond categories, and in fact, for all those things where there is no category, we basically like take bad boy romance or female protagonist thrillers or things like superhero fiction. We have to look across categories because the books are in many different ones. And there we basically employ what a data geek would call text mining, where we look for certain clues in the titles and book descriptions to basically build our own category. And that, by the way, also helps us in determining what are high-selling tropes. And I showed this one example because it's so eerie, and I thought about whether to share it or not. This is really, I believe, a coincidence. I think there's no collective mind of readers that have a certain fantasy that then becomes reality. But this is really eerie, probably the most eerie analysis I've ever looked at. We did a special report back in October 2019 on post-apocalyptic and dystopian fiction. And we looked for the occurrence of certain words in titles and book descriptions and asked ourselves at the time, you know, what is the best trope to write in as a post-apocalyptic writer? You know, is it the electromagnetic attack or the solar storm? And well, guess what? The highest selling apocalypse, if you will, the highest selling trope within post-apocalyptic towards the end of the year was disease, illness, pandemic, plague. I found this the most eerie thing I've ever seen in my 25 years of data analysis. So, but to lift up spirits and get away from the topic, this, listing the books with certain keywords also then helps us understand certain cover types that sell. So, for example, there's from the recent report of romantic comedy. Is it what is the market share of flat vector graphics versus the sexy guy, the girl, the romantic couple, the sexy couple? You see, this is where we drive at with our analysis to, ultimately help you with those two things, to help you with decisions concerning what to write and the tactics, how to market. And the last piece of information for the content part of the webinar, and then I invite you with Joanna to have a look behind the scenes of K-Lytics and what we offer. And by the way, we do have a special offer for you too. But what is important is, how to choose your genre wisely, and this whole term of right to market. Write what you love. That is important. Don't bend yourself. You cannot write Amish romance, even if I told you it's a big seller, if you cannot conceive writing it for the next 15 years. You have to bring a certain craft skill to the table. If you're not a good writer, no magic is going to help you. And you have to bring to the table a certain knowledge for a certain genre. I can tell you legal thrillers are great, but if you don't know legal proceedings, think of what Grisham knows, then it's not worth getting into it. This is what you have to bring to the table. What we can bring to the table is the bottom side, the green part. What is a market and what are the marketing means you need to match the above three factors with the things below? I think that is where the magic, at least in the long run, the magic of creativity and success starts to happen. So let me pause here. This is some of the data and some of the trends I wanted to give to you. And Joanna, if you don't mind, I will then also, before we go into the Q&A, the next, 5 minutes, give a quick rundown of also what we have behind the scenes here for you at K-Lytics. Johnny, is still there?
Yes, please do. Everyone's saying that's fantastic. Got lots of great information, just fantastic. So yes, tell us more, please, because I use K-Lytics data all the time.
All right, there we go. Well, very briefly, by now I think you've understood the point. The whole point is to provide you market insights at your fingertips and have research done for you so that you can focus on what you should be doing best and doing the most, which is the actual writing, getting the books done and writing all those beautiful stories out there that meet the demand of certain people. So in essence, what we have at K-Lytics is, a huge database where we monthly track the performance of each and every category as it is on Amazon. Now, I know not everybody may be into sorting Excel sheets like I just showed you the moment before. So there's also genre reports where we take a deep dive into this. But the essence and the data behind all those reports are from a monthly genre performance database, of which there are more than 7,000 categories, which you can download, sort, search, and filter, as I've just shown you, where if you ask yourself, well, you are a romance writer and you want to see this month what are the highest selling romance categories, you would basically simply click enter romance into the search window or filter for the category. But mind you, what people often don't know is there are so many romance categories outside the main romance category. Not all of them may be relevant because you're not into comics and manga, but what you can then do is basically, once you have this, sort this whole thing and say, well, okay, what are the highest selling romance categories? And so you sort largest, that's the lowest ones, smallest rank. So smallest rank meaning highest sales, puts you the highest ranking ones at the top. You could argue, well, what are the smallest categories? So least overcrowded, you basically sort it by the field. So currently the smallest category there would be historical romance Tudor with, as of last month, only 279 English-speaking titles in it. And by the way, many of them are not Tudor Romans, but Regency Romans guys who started to abuse the category for their very purpose, but you get the idea. So one thing is the monthly database that we maintain for authors and publishers. And for those of you who are more visual type of people, we also provide what you've seen before, these various strategy maps. We look at monthly trends. As I told earlier, it is extremely important to look at things over time and not just at a moment in time, which you can get totally lost at if you are just browsing various categories on a given point in time on the Amazon platform. And if you want to dive straight into, as a member here, into various genres and want to have my interpretation of the data results, and having prepared the data results for you, we have ready to use research reports in the members area for you. And each of those, by the way, constitute like whole products in their own right. Where, in the members area, if you go to our custom research areas, we call them, we publish these special reports, basically 2 to 3 a month, where we then use the category to start off with, but then say, okay, let's do a special report just on female detectives. Let's deep dive into sci-fi and fantasy. Let's go into psychological thrillers. Let's really dissect romantic comedy. Let's see what's happened to superhero fiction. You get the idea, and all of these are available to you if you are a member of ours. So this is basically what we have in our members areas. There's video tutorials and all the goodies that you would expect from such a product. So in order to have enough time for the Q&A, the last point I'd like to make is all these genre webinars. We have category webinars, we have subgenre webinars, by now far more than 25 that you can look into. As said, we look into factors such as top-selling cover art for the various genres, what to give your cover designer, everything in one place, so you can either take it further or have a starting point or have already the output to give to your respective counterpart in your marketing, or some of you do it yourselves, or you have a designer or you have a person doing whatever advertising for you. So Joanna, like every year, asked me to put together a special offer for basically all the people in Joanna's tribe, if you will. And we have 2 memberships for you that you can choose from. One is the premium membership, one is the elite. There's basically 2 differences. The database on the left-hand side only goes to subcategory level. However, you will have access already to 60% plus of all the genre reports. So it actually gets you quite far. If you say, hey, I want to have the complete monthly database every month and all the content with all the bonus reports, sub-reports, we have the elite level for you. And Joanna asked me to put together a special offer for you now on the website. We currently also have a special offer which gives you the premium membership at $37 a month, or the elite memberships. Now, the elite memberships, you can go monthly or you can use an annual pass. But what's the very special offer for Joanna's friends is, if you do take us up on the elite annual membership, you basically get 6 bonus months on top. So you are fully covered for 18 months with all the market intel, all the reports, monthly updates of all the categories, and new and old content without limit. In other words, if you buy the elite annual pass, you practically get the elite level for basically the price of premium. And if you do want to take this, and I know some of us will have to think about it, this offer is valid until April 5th. And I, of course, with my team, will look forward to servicing you. And I also put the link here in the in the chat for you. You simply go to K-Lytics.com/Joanna to make use of the very offer. And with this, thanks a lot for also listening to this part of the presentation. I hope I could give you a bit of a glimpse of what it is that we do. And I know Joanna has picked up some questions along the way, and we of course will be happy to answer those as far as we can. Joanna.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Alex. As ever, I've been using your data for a few years now, and I still always get something from your presentations. And lots of people saying that they got a lot of useful stuff out of it. So that was fantastic. Now, we are going to do a Q&A here, but we've got this weird timer that we can see. You can't see it, which is counting down with about 7 minutes to go. Now, we think we can carry on after those 7 minutes are up.
We've never seen this timer before in our GoToWebinar platform. We don't know where it's coming from. Perhaps Netflix watches during the crisis are taking so much bandwidth that they now limit this. I have no idea.
But we have, if we just disappear quickly, then I'll just say thank you now for everyone coming. But we are going to carry on answering questions. Okay, so one question is around where the data comes from. So Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is Amazon.com, English language, ebooks only, apart from the extra audio stuff.
That is correct. So it is Amazon.com. We are currently working on a mapping of US. Well, we actually do have some UK data already. It's not ready for publication yet, but we will have also for the elite members very soon at least a listing and initial performance data of UK data, which we will then do probably on a quarterly basis. But so that is the current status, and yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and I mean, just to be clear, the biggest market for indies is the US Amazon.com store. That's where most of us make our money. So, the bulk of our money. We sell all over the world, and obviously I'm wide with all my ebooks and my print and audio and everything. But that's the reason you do that, right, Alex? It's the biggest market.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then somebody said, where does Alex actually get this data? Because as far as anyone's concerned, you can't get it from Amazon. I know you can't reveal too techie, but where do you get it from?
Well, there's a huge, semi-automated, but also, both automated and manual effort. We monitor, basically, we do what you do, but we do it with a larger team and do it more regularly, monitoring all the bestseller lists, right? Now, the bestseller lists, we don't do this we do it for a certain period of days every month. So we are representative in the data, and we basically then compute all the averages, what is the average sales rank of all the data. So the issue is, unlike in other big categories like non-book categories, Amazon Kindle does not have an API that is a back-end interface that could give you that data. So you literally have to look at the website of what the data is. The important point is we don't make this data up. The only thing we do estimate is the absolute number of sales, where we work with many authors together to have an approximation of, a sales rank of X, how does that roughly translate into monetary terms? And that is obviously a guesstimate. Well, it is a correlation for the geeks, but that is where the data is coming from. So lots of, manual effort also going into this to ensure the quality of the data and representativeness of the data.
And several people have asked me personally what I use it for. I have used the data for my Sweet Romance that I co-wrote with my mom, and also my thrillers and my crime, and also some of my nonfiction, because basically you can change your categories. A few people asked this: can you change your categories? Can you change your keywords? Yes, you can. And what Alex does is every month, some of these categories are changing. So and we don't necessarily know that. So it means you can actually get the new categories, or you can change them, or you can, email Amazon Central and move them. So that's really important to know, because these things are not set in stone. They change quite regularly, don't they, Alex?
Well, they do change, but they're simply additions, and these are like tactically things sometimes to exploit. I personally also see the biggest benefit, that basically I ask my clients too, well, what do you use it for? And of course, many of them use it for the very tactical purpose of let's, have the best keywords, let's have the best categories and use it for those tactical purposes. But if you want to know the life-changing effect it can have, is to open the eyes. Oh my God, I know why my book hasn't been selling, because there is no market. But if I just shifted a bit further to the right and took my stores into that direction, I see there is now a pocket of demand there that I could address, right? So that is what I developed it, by the way, for in the very first place, to basically marry your creativity and your creation as a writer with a market and help you not to waste your creative efforts for areas where there's simply no demand or where it's simply overcrowded.
Yeah, and a couple of people have noted that maybe with the current world situation, we all, even those of us who haven't written to market so far, might start writing to market. And I've actually put myself in that category. I don't usually write to market, but I'm certainly considering it, like many other people. So just a few more. Oh yes, a couple of people said, so Alex, you've told us what some of the hot categories used to be. Can you pick the next hot category, please? And I said you couldn't do that. Or can you tease any reports that you're focusing on? Because you pick your reports, don't you?
Yeah, we do pick our report. I mean, a couple of things that we published very recently, I tell you, which was domestic/psychological thrillers we looked at. We will look again at clean and wholesome romance. Next week will have a sci-fi romance. One of the first genre reports we did publish, by the way, like on niche markets, was 2016. At the time, it was called Alien Warrior Romance. So for those who are in Alien Warrior Romance, it was a big thing, 4 years ago. It then sort of died down. Now we see it come back up again, and we wanted to have a closer look at that. Then there are simply things also we look at regularly. We will update again our urban fantasy one, the paranormal romance one, and there it is always then interesting to see within the reports, or take the historical romance one for that matter. What is the next, where is the market going? Is it the vampires? Is it the dragons? Is it just shifters? Is it the cyborgs, And there, the observation, now that we've done, like in the dystopian report, which I showed you, now that we've done the reports already over a couple of years, we can also now see and start spotting trends for specific tropes, whether they're going up or down.
Fantastic. Okay. It looks like we haven't been cut off.
No, it's perfect. We can, we're already over time. So me being from Switzerland, that's obviously a deadly sin. I mustn't do that. But since we're all in lockdown anyway, why don't we hang out and we just cut the rest from the video, and at least we want to get the questions
answered. I will ask a few more questions. So if anyone is still here and I can see that there's quite a lot of you still here, but I'm going to have a look at the other questions that have come up. Okay, so how long until you're going to put the audio reports out?
Well, the first beta version I plan to put out in the next 4 weeks, basically. So the data is there, and I will probably release it without super detailed estimates of what absolute level of sales is behind a certain sales rank, because you can already work with the information I showed you. The relative ranking of these things is already helpful in its own right. So we decided to go ahead with it over the next 4 weeks. Don't crucify me if it's 6, but I really want to quality assure the data for our elite members and then get it out.
Yeah, sure. Is the cover comparison in the premium version or only the elite?
Well, the cover comparison is in the genre reports. So some of them are available for premium. That's actually a question that sometimes comes up. So let me just explain that distinction, because I think it is a valid and important one. So if you compare the two member memberships, the premium one, there's two distinctions of the membership. One we already covered is the depth of the monthly performance database. So if you want to go to, and by the way, it doesn't stop at subcategories. I should have added this. It's like down to level 5 categories, so the lowest level you can get. So where premium would stop at romance, paranormal, the elite level would have all the data for angels, demons, devils, ghosts, and so on and so forth. That we talked about. When it comes to the individual reports, say if we publish a report, there's a whole seminar on historical romance, which is a 70-page report where you do find the cover comparison. And by the way, in the more recent reports, we also start rolling back in time. So what are the historical romance covers now versus what were there in the last report last year or the year before? However, if you are in historical romance, you will know that, well, the covers are very distinct to the subgenres within historical romance. So we add special reports such as Scottish romance, Regency romance, Victorian romance, World War II romance we had also at one point in time. And the covers you find in there would only be viewable to the elite members. And I hope that covers that sometimes not so clean cut or a visible difference between the two memberships.
If people buy any product from you, do you have a money back guarantee period?
Yes, we have a 2 weeks money back guarantee. No questions asked, although obviously, if you do cancel, I try to find out, what can we improve. But obviously, we have a money back guarantee. It's 2 weeks, and we never had any incident where that wouldn't be honored. Why shouldn't we?
No, and that's very important to me. I hope you guys realize my reputation is on the line when I bring people to you, and I trust Alex to deliver a quality product. Otherwise, I wouldn't bring him to you. So hence why I think that's important. And if there are quite a few techie geeks on the line who were thrilled by your data, quite a few people who are not techie geeks as well. But if people have
we're hopefully thrilled as well by the data. Sorry,
yes, no, everyone thrilled. I personally never ask you techie geek questions, but some people might have questions for you. What is the email that they can contact you on directly to ask any further questions?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's only so much we can do in one evening, and should you have questions either about the offer or content questions, you're very welcome to contact me. You can reach me here at support@klytics.com. That's k-lytics.com. Just put in the subject line webinar with Joanna or to Alex. It will be channeled to me and I will answer it personally. And given the lockdown, you might even get a fairly quick answer.
Yeah, I think we're all answering emails quite quickly at the moment. So that's fantastic. And lots of people saying thank you and heading off to various things now. So I think we'll close there. But thank you, everyone, for coming and joining us today, wherever you are in the world. We really appreciate it. And I hope you found it a bit of escape, a different kind of escape for sure, but that you've all learnt something, that you found this useful. And of course, reach out to Alex with any questions. Go check out klytics.com/Joanna. And also you're going to get the replay within 24 hours. Is that all right, Alex?
You put me on the line there, but I'll deliver.
Fantastic. So you will get the replay, and of course you can always reply to that with a question as well. And we hope you have found that useful. So wishing you all the best and stay safe. Any final comments, Alex?
Well, a big thank you to you, that we do this again together. It's always fun, and we're in this together, through good and bad times, by now one could almost say. And for those of you who are out there in the world and still have questions, I will also go through the webinar logs where all your questions that you put in now have been logged, and I will try to go through those and answer those that haven't been answered.
Oh, wow. You're amazing, because I've tried my best, but please, that's just brilliant to deliver that. So thank you, everybody, and stay safe and happy writing, happy publishing, and we'll see you next time, I guess. Good night.